coups in 2020 and 2021. The junta has promised to hold elections, but it keeps delaying it. Rich nations reject the COP29 draft. Negotiators are now racing back against the clock to broker a $1 trillion deal to help poorer nations tackle global warming. The UN Climate Summit is supposed to conclude tomorrow, but it is almost certain to run into overtime. New weapons, new goals, and more escalation. That's the news from Ukraine. We saw them fire American ATACMS earlier this week. Yesterday, they fired a British missile. It's called Storm Shadow. These are long-range cruise missiles. They're fired with bomber jets. They're fired from bomber jets, rather. Now, Kyiv has not officially confirmed this attack, but reports say they fired 12 missiles, all of them at Russia's Kursk region. A video has emerged from this part of Russia. It shows multiple missiles slamming into the ground. However, it's not clear which missiles. They could be British-made Storm Shadow or American ATACMS. Take a look. The Storm Shadow is a lethal missile. It has a range of up to 250 kilometers, which is more than enough to strike deep inside Russia. It can be used to target bunkers or arms depots. Russia says they shot down 2 of these missiles, so the rest presumably hit. And how are they responding? With more escalation. Russia fired a barrage of missiles at Ukraine, 1 hypersonic missile, 7 cruise missiles, and most importantly, an intercontinental ballistic missile. Russia has not admitted this yet, but if confirmed, it would be huge news. ICBMs are very powerful missiles. They can travel more than 5,000 kilometers, meaning they can strike enemies from a long distance away, which is why ICBMs are often used to launch nukes. They can carry a nuclear or conventional warhead. This one appears to be conventional. It was reportedly fired from Russia's Astrakhan region. It targeted Ukraine's Dnipro city. And damages? Local officials say an industrial facility was set on fire. If confirmed, this would be the first use of ICBMs in any war, the first anywhere. But the West is not convinced. Dnipro is just 700 kilometers from Astrakhan, so using an ICBM seems unnecessary. Other Russian missiles could have done the same job. To make matters worse, Russia is behaving suspiciously. Their spokesperson was addressing the press earlier today. In the middle of the presser, she got a call. Her microphone picked up the phone conversation. A man could be heard saying, "Don't comment on the ballistic missile strike." Listen to this.
Так, с нами ли портал News.ru? Да. Алло. Да, у меня брифинг. Да, хорошо, спасибо. С нами ли News.ru?
Either way, one thing is clear. Neither side is holding back. They want to make gains before the winter sets in, both literally and figuratively. The seasonal winter and the winter of arms freeze by Donald Trump. Ukraine says it will punch with all its means.
There is some media reports out saying that Storm Shadow missiles have been fired into Russian territory.
So as I say, we're good planners. We plan and will be defending and giving punches back.
Okay.
With all the means available.
Like I said, it's escalation season, and the reason is Donald Trump. He has hinted at stopping military aid to Ukraine. Chances are he will push Kyiv towards talks, maybe a negotiated settlement. Both Russia and Ukraine are preparing for this scenario. Russia wants to gain as much territory as possible, so if the front line is frozen, they have more land to bargain with. Same with Ukraine. They're desperate to hold on to territory in Kursk and to delay Russian advances in the east. Supporting them is US President Joe Biden. Look at his moves this week. First, he lifted the ban on firing US missiles at Russia. Second, he decided to give landmines to Ukraine. Again, it was a previous red line. And third, a military package worth $275 million. We're talking rocket systems and tank munitions. And fourth, waiving Ukraine's loans. Kyiv owes billions of dollars to the US. Out of this, Biden wants to forgive loans worth $4.7 billion. So clearly, this is a coordinated strategy. It's not like Zelensky is suddenly going ballistic. He has been unleashed by Joe Biden. The question is, will it change the military equation? That depends on two factors. One, how Kyiv uses the long-range missiles, and two, how far Biden and the West are willing to go. Let's look at the missiles first. Around 225 Russian bases are within their range, 225 bases, so Moscow will have to devote resources to defending them. Maybe that will divert some of their focus from the front line. At least that's what Ukraine is hoping for. But these missiles cost $1 million each. Plus, Kyiv does not have a lot of them. So it's a question of using them wisely and strategically. Experts say it is a significant boost for Kyiv, but perhaps not a game changer. Which brings us to the second factor. How far will the West go? The US and the UK have not publicly admitted to allowing Ukraine to use the Storm Shadow or ATACMS. Yes, it's public knowledge, but neither side has openly acknowledged it. And there's a reason why. These are Western missiles thudding into Russian soil. In the future, they could kill Russian soldiers, so Moscow could easily retaliate. Not just against Ukraine, but also against Western assets. And we saw that yesterday. Most Western countries shut their embassies in Kyiv. They were bracing for a Russian strike. Zelensky has dismissed these fears, though. He says the frenzy helps Russia.
The information frenzy that took place today, with some panic messages passed around, all this benefits only Russia. Please take care of yourselves, support our army, and be especially careful that no one manipulates your emotions for their own advantage.
That's Russia for you. They're masters of shadow warfare, whether it's sabotage or propaganda or covert ops. Ukraine is hoping that its allies will hold their nerve, outlast Russia's scare tactics. But more than 1,000 days into the war, Western resolve is not what it used to be. $34 billion. That's the loss the Adani Group suffered today. It's one of India's biggest conglomerates, a star of the stock market. But today, Adani companies saw a massive sell-off. They've lost $34 billion in value in one day. The reason is a lawsuit in the United States. The US government has taken the Adani Group to court. A case has been filed against Gautam Adani. He's the chairman of the group. He has been charged with bribery and fraud. The lawsuit has been filed by prosecutors in New York. Apart from Gautam Adani, the lawsuit names 7 people. The list includes Sagar Adani, who is a nephew of Gautam Adani. Now, this case has far-reaching consequences. Its impact will not be limited to the stock market. There could be political ramifications too, especially for India's BJP-led government. So what is this case and why is it such a big deal? The case revolves around a solar power plant. In the years 2019 and 2020, the Adani Group secured some contracts. But they weren't the only ones who got this deal. They were in partnership with a US-based company called Azure Power. This company is into renewable energy. It was listed on the New York Stock Exchange. So this American company got the solar power plant deal in India along with the Adani Group. In other words, an American company is involved in this deal. That is how US investigators are also involved. These two companies, the American one and the Adani Group, got a major contract in India. The contract is worth $6 billion. What for? To build solar energy plants. And who awarded the deal? The Solar Energy Corporation of India. It is owned by the government of India. Adani announced the deal in 2020, calling this pact, and I'm quoting, one of its kind. It held a lot of promise. The Adani said that this project will create 400,000 jobs, 400,000 direct and indirect jobs, and it will displace 900 million tons of carbon dioxide. So it was projected as a win-win. Now, how did the Adanis get this deal? American prosecutors say they bribed Indian officials. They paid bribes to the tune of $250 million, and that is why the bribery charge. They've also been accused of fraud. US prosecutors say the Adani group committed fraud. How? Well, they raised some debt worth over $3 billion. This was in the form of loans and bonds. And who was defrauded? The investors and lenders. How? Because the Adanis hid the fact that they had given bribes to get this contract. So bribery and fraud are the charges. They're yet to be proven in court. The Adani group has rejected all of them, calling them baseless. Their statement said, and I'm quoting again, all possible legal recourse will be sought. But in the meantime, this case is hurting their business. Today, a major initiative was called off. The Adanis cancelled a bond offering. They wanted to raise $600 million. But after news of this case came out, they cancelled it. Perhaps it's discouraged them from dealing in the American currency. Then they suffered a setback in Kenya too. The Kenyan government has cancelled an airport and power deals with Adani. And back in India, the case has become a political issue. The opposition is using it to attack the government. India's opposition leader Rahul Gandhi held a press conference today. He accused the Adani group of corruption.
It's now pretty clear and established in America that Mr. Adani has broken both American law and Indian law. He's been indicted in the United States, and I'm wondering why Mr. Adani is still running around a free man in this country.
The past year has been challenging for Adani. The group has been facing relentless scrutiny. First, from Hindenburg Research, the short seller, then from Indian courts, then from India's market regulator SEBI, the Securities and Exchange Board of India, SEBI, and now American investigators. And through all of this, Adani stocks have fluctuated wildly. Last year, they lost over $100 billion in market cap, but they managed to recover it. Now the probe in the US will test them again. Now let's turn our attention to China. Beijing is gearing up for a crisis, one that will take place exactly 2 months from now. China is preparing itself for the return of Donald Trump and the subsequent trade war. Trump is fed up with Chinese imports. He thinks that they undercut American products, leading to job losses in the US. So he has a simple plan. Trump wants to impose exorbitant tariffs on Chinese imports. They could go as high as 60%, 60. And this would be devastating for China's trade. A tariff is basically a tax on imported goods. It causes their prices to shoot up. And when prices go up, demand goes down. Donald Trump hopes that tariffs will crush the demand for Chinese imports and made in America goods will take their place. That is the upcoming trade war in a nutshell. Beijing just has 2 months. 60 days to prepare for 60% tariffs. So they're scrambling to Trump-proof their trade. China unveiled a new plan today. Their Commerce Ministry put out a document. It's a 9-point plan. It includes things like financing support to companies involved in international trade, expanding the coverage of export credit insurance, and trying to boost e-commerce sales overseas. Beijing has also issued orders to its border provinces. Provincial and local governments have been told to monitor trade and provide all the support they can. All of this is part of today's plan. But it's not the only thing that China has been working on. You may have noticed that Beijing seems to be friendlier these days. It is reaching out to both rivals and competitors. We've been telling you about the thaw in ties with India, about the recent talks to normalize relations. China is trying to improve other ties as well. President Xi Jinping was in Brazil this week for the G20 summit. He met leaders from across the world there, and he struck a conciliatory tone. Look at Europe. Chinese state media says that Xi was being quite friendly. He said China and the EU could resolve their differences via dialogue. This is a far cry from what happened just a few months back. The EU was planning its own set of tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, so China promptly hit back with tariffs on European brandy. A trade war was on the verge of breaking out there, but now Xi Jinping is talking about resolving differences. Why the change in tone? Because China does not want a multi-front trade war. The Trump tariffs seem inevitable. There's probably no escaping them. So Beijing wants to keep other markets open. That is why China is backing down when it comes to Europe and reaching out to countries like India, Japan, and Australia. It's all about self-preservation. If and when Trump shuts the door, China will send its goods to other markets instead. Now, obviously, this helps China. But what about the other countries? Will an increase in Chinese goods help Europe? Or India, Japan, and Australia for that matter? It might help in the short run. Cheap Chinese goods coming in may lower prices in the short term. So they could help lower inflation. But just think about it. Cheap Chinese goods are what caused the situation in the first place. A flood of Chinese imports may undercut local products and put local companies out of business. It's already happening. The Indian steel industry is already feeling the heat. Steel companies have made a plea to the government. They're asking for a temporary tax on Chinese steel imports. You see, India has been importing a record amount of steel from China this year, and this was before the thaw in ties. Imagine what will happen next. When the Trump tariffs come in and Beijing looks for a new dumping ground, what happens then? It's something every country should be wary of in the coming years. Bitcoin is inching towards a major milestone, one that was considered impossible 2 years back. It's worth almost $98,000 now. $98,000. The race is on for 100,000. Imagine that. One Bitcoin could soon be worth 100,000 US dollars, which is more than 82 lakh Indian rupees. One Bitcoin. What explains this sudden bull run? Simply put, it's Donald Trump. Since his election victory, Bitcoin has been on a roll. Just look at the trajectory. It was at $68,000 on election night. It rose to almost $75,000 when Trump won. And now it's inching towards 100,000. All because of sentiment. Trump has not taken charge yet, but indications are that he will be a crypto-friendly president, that he will reduce regulations on crypto. We saw that first on the campaign trail. He promised to turn the US into the world's crypto capital. His cabinet picks also indicate that. Donald Trump has selected Howard Lutnick to be his commerce secretary. He's a big crypto fan. Listen to what he said about Bitcoin.
I have hundreds of millions of dollars in exposure to Bitcoin. Every time Bitcoin dips, I'm going to be the buyer.
Well, that's not all. Reports say that Trump is mulling a crypto czar, an official tasked with boosting the crypto industry. He's also thinking about a Bitcoin reserve. Now, this is a radical idea, a new idea. We know that countries have strategic gold reserves. Countries also have strategic oil reserves. These are held by governments or central banks. The purpose? To hedge against volatility, basically to overcome tough financial times. Reports say Donald Trump could create a similar reserve of Bitcoin. Now, just to be clear, this is all speculation and market expectation at this point. But it's enough to trigger a bull run, which brings us to the main question. Should you invest in Bitcoin? Is this the right time to take the plunge? Never ask this question to crypto bros. Their answer is always yes. They feel the sky is the limit for Bitcoin. But here's a couple of factors to keep in mind if you plan to take the plunge. Number one, buying at an all-time high is never a good idea, especially a volatile asset like Bitcoin. Yes, it could rise further leading up to Trump's inauguration, but it could also crash if he does not live up to the expectations. So be aware of that risk. That's point number one. Number two, you can't use it for transactions. Bitcoin was created as an alternative to currency, but nowadays it's become an investment tool. Only 2 countries use Bitcoin as legal tender. These are El Salvador and the Central African Republic. Elsewhere, in all other countries, you cannot buy things with Bitcoin. You can only hold it like stocks. Which brings us to the third factor. You'll have to pay a tax on profits. Here in India, it's 30% on all crypto profits. Compare that to other financial assets. Tax on short-term capital gains is 20%. On long-term capital gains, it's 12.5%. So crypto attracts a much higher tax in India, and that is a policy decision. Unlike Donald Trump or El Salvador, New Delhi is not promoting crypto. It is being vigilant and watchful. So research your country's policy on crypto. Only then should you invest. It's a lot easier than it used to be, though. Earlier, you could only buy Bitcoins from crypto exchanges like Binance or FTX. A lot of them turned out to be shady, so the risk of investing was very high. But nowadays, you have Bitcoin ETFs, like gold or crude ETFs. ETFs are exchange-traded funds. These are special government-regulated funds. They track the price of Bitcoin, but you don't actually have to own it. No crypto exchange or wallet business. And that's been the big feature of crypto in recent times. It's not limited to tech bros in basements. Even non-tech savvy people can invest in it. Of course, whether you should or not is a decision that only you should take. Most experts say start slowly, perhaps less than 5 or 3% of your portfolio. We would say talk to your financial advisors. Do not blindly jump on the hype train. Make calculated decisions.
Didn't mean to startle you.
We had some trees come down and a lot of things blew around, but we did okay.
Yeah.
Nothing major.
boy, did Mother Nature get a freak on last night.
Now let's talk about Google. The US Justice Department wants to break it up. It began with an anti-competition lawsuit. In August, a judge ruled that Google was crushing competition. So now the US Justice Department has come up with a solution. They say Google should sell Chrome, the search engine Chrome. Remember, Google is the undisputed king of search engines. It dominates 90% of the market, which makes it a very powerful monopoly. But the US wants to break it up. This is a rare and significant proposal. Antitrust breakups like this are very, very rare, and they could cost you and me. Our next report tells you how.
The year is 2040. Google is broken up. You want to decide where to eat. You have a plethora of choices. Every search engine comes up with a different list. You need the route to the restaurant. One mapping app is a thing of the past. You have multiple apps and multiple routes. You want to download an app? There are hundreds of app stores. They're all vying for users, fees are lower, and the choices are many. Your data, too, isn't held captive by one company. It isn't concentrated in a few massive silos. It's free-flowing, and you get to decide which app you share it with. If it sounds too good to be true, well, it's because it is. We live in a world of big tech monopoly. Power is concentrated in the hands of a few, namely 5 companies: Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, Meta, and Microsoft. The United States now wants to break one of those companies, Google. It wants to end its search monopoly. So the Department of Justice has asked Google to sell off Chrome. Now, Google dominates the search market. If you need to find anything on the internet, you don't search for it, you Google it. It controls over 90% of the market share. In August, US District Judge Amit Mehta delivered a landmark anti-competition ruling. It found that Google illegally suppresses its competition. So the Department of Justice wants to break this monopoly. It wants Google to sell Chrome. Of course, Google will not go down without a fight. Alphabet CEO Sundar Pichai is already dialing Donald Trump. He spoke to the US President-elect, and Elon Musk was also part of the call. We don't know what they spoke about, but the Trump administration may not be of much help. After all, the lawsuit against Google was filed during the last few months of the first Trump administration. So Google can't bank on Trump completely. Now, the final decision will come only by 2025, so there's still some time. But even if Google is asked to break up, there will be a couple of problems. Number one, it will take a lot of time. Tech antitrust cases take years. In 1999, a federal judge asked Microsoft to break up. The company appealed it. The decision was overturned. So antitrust corporate breakups are very rare, even when the government is gunning for it. The second problem is an alternative. Over the years, Google has had many rivals. Case in point, Microsoft's Bing. But nothing has dampened its popularity. People associate search with Google. And while the judge wants to carve out Chrome, Chrome is free only because it's part of Google. Once it's not, it's difficult to say whether it can sustain as a standalone business. Who will bear the cost of that? Well, it's the customers. They'll be charged for services that are now free. So while breaking up Google may be the dominant sentiment, it isn't sustainable without other options. Also, who's to say the government won't cut a deal with Google and nip this in the bud? After all, they did it with Microsoft 2 decades ago. Breaking up big tech isn't just about ending monopolies, it's about creating a world where technology serves humanity and not the other way around.
In Pakistan, they're conducting anti-terror drills with China. They're first since 2019. The drills will continue for a month. They will include cleanup operations too. The question is, why now? Because the situation in Pakistan is dire. Chinese interests and Chinese assets are perpetually under attack, and there are a lot of them. China has invested more than $65 billion in Pakistan. It is building the CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Thousands of Chinese workers work in Pakistan. They're repeatedly coming under attack. In the last 1 year, many of them have been killed in terror strikes. Beijing asked Islamabad to crack down, but it did not help. So now China is taking control of its own security. Our next report brings you the details.
It's called Warrior 8, a joint anti-terror drill between China and Pakistan. The exercises have kicked off today from a military base in Pakistan's Babi. More than 300 Chinese troops will take part in this. They are from the Western Theatre Command of the People's Liberation Army. The drills will focus on a lot of things like counter-terrorism strike operations, cleanup operations, all to enhance security cooperation. The two sides will conduct live drills and engage in multi-level training across various specialties. China and Pakistan last conducted joint counter-terrorism military drills in 2019, so this is a first in 5 years. So why the drills now? It's because of constant attacks on Chinese interests in the country, like the CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. It's a part of China's multi-billion-dollar Belt and Road Initiative. So, thousands of Chinese workers are in Pakistan. They are working on these projects, and Islamabad can't guarantee their safety. In 2018, the Chinese consulate in Karachi was targeted. In 2020, the Pakistan Stock Exchange was attacked because it is partly owned by a Chinese consortium. In 2022, another suicide attack near a Confucius Institute killed 3 Chinese tutors. In March this year, 5 Chinese engineers were killed. This was near the China-backed Dasu hydropower project. In October, 2 Chinese workers were killed in a blast near Karachi's international airport. Who's responsible for these attacks? There's the Baloch Liberation Army. It's a separatist group banned in Pakistan. The BLA seeks independence for Balochistan. It believes that Beijing is helping Islamabad exploit Balochistan. It also opposes China-led projects in the region. Then there's also the TTP, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. In 2022, the TTP ended its ceasefire with Islamabad, and that has resulted in a rapid escalation of terror. For nearly 2 years, the TTP has conducted multiple attacks, killing several people and injuring hundreds. In the first 8 months of 2024, nearly 800 people were killed in terror attacks. Over 700 have been injured. So, Pakistan has a terror problem, and it has tried to counter it. In the month of June, Islamabad launched a nationwide anti-terror campaign, but that did not work. The terror attacks continued. And now, Beijing is worried. The value of CPEC projects is around $65 billion. It's China's most ambitious BRI project. Also, Pakistan owes Beijing around $27 billion. That's more than any other country in the world. So China has a lot of money tied up in the country. It has long asked Pakistan to control the attacks, but Islamabad has repeatedly failed to do so. In fact, last year, it even shut down Chinese businesses in the name of keeping them safe. So this time, Beijing has decided to take things into its own hands, conducting anti-terror drills to keep its assets and people safe. Will it work out? We'll find out soon enough.
Yesterday, Zomato delivered. Not just food, but also a surprise. Their CEO posted an interesting message on social media. His name is Deepinder Goyal. While he posted, what he posted was a job listing. Zomato was looking for a chief of staff. But why on X? Why not on LinkedIn? Well, let's show you the description. Goyal said the job will not pay a salary in the first year. In fact, you, the applicant, must pay them 20 lakh rupees or $24,000 to get the job. That's what you had to pay. If they like you, you can stay on at Zomato. And from the second year, you will get a salary, apparently more than 50 lakh rupees. That was the offer. Goyal asked interested parties to send a letter to him. No resumes, though. He only wanted a 200-word essay. Do you know how many people applied? Zomato says more than 18,000 people. You can imagine what happened next. Big debates, a lot of trolling, and a lot of questions. Deepinder Goyal answered some of them today. He posted an update on the job. Apparently, the 20 lakh payment was a gimmick. He was never serious about it. The idea was to filter out genuine applicants from entitled ones. How? Well, listen to what he said. We are going to reject most of the applications who have the money or even talked about the money. We are going to find genuine intent and learning mindset from the sea of applications we have received. So the whole thing was a ruse. Goyal says he will pay the person who gets the job. Does any of this sound complicated and unnecessary? Well, if it doesn't, why would people talk about it? And how would Zomato get free PR? But let's keep that aside for the moment. Let's look at the idea being pushed here. For most people, a career means college. You finish school with good marks, you enroll at a good college, you finish your degree at the college, and finally you get a job. That is the universal trajectory. It is tried and tested. Zomato said, forget all that. We need people who are hungry to learn, not people looking to build their resume. On paper, it is an interesting idea. Learning on the job is the best sort of learning. It's hands-on, it's high stakes, and it's dynamic. You're not confined by classrooms or theories. You learn by handling real situations. No college degree can give you that. Still, a lot of questions remain. For starters, how scalable is this model? Zomato is hiring one person using this method. Can they hire hundreds with the same confidence? It's a massive risk. Which isn't the case with degrees. With degrees, you know what their skills are. Well, more or less you do. You know what they can do. So it's easier to filter out applicants. Same for the other side. Maybe students do prefer such alternative learning methods. But will companies value it? Will they take a gamble and hire them? These are all important questions to keep in mind. Ideally, we should have a mix of both. A degree or course that offers real-world experience, not the boring mandatory internships, but practical work experience. Has Zomato found the answer to that? I'm afraid it's still too early to say. Their CEO claims it's all about finding people with intent. He doesn't want people who will actually pay 20 lakh rupees for the job. He wants people who ignored the 20 lakhs and applied for the job. What does that reveal about the candidates? Their desperation, their keenness to learn, or their appetite to troll? I guess full marks for triggering a conversation, but as a hiring strategy, the jury is still out. Now let's turn to Europe. Northern Europe has been in a state of alarm all week. 2 undersea cables were cut over the weekend, 2 cables in the Baltic Sea, one linking Germany to Finland and the other connecting Lithuania to Sweden. All 4 nations are NATO members, all of them support Ukraine, so all of them were quick to point the finger at Russia. The NATO members suspected sabotage. They accused Moscow of engaging in hybrid warfare, and they have begun their investigations. In fact, they've also identified a suspect, a ship that could have cut the cables. But there's a small hiccup. The ship is not Russian, it's Chinese. Our next report explains.
2 undersea cables in the Baltic Sea were cut over the weekend. These 2 cables, the BCS East-West Interlink connecting Sweden and Lithuania, and the Sea Lion 1 connecting Finland to Germany. The interlink cable was cut early on Sunday, around 10 a.m. local time. The Sea Lion 1 was damaged less than a day later, at about 4 a.m. on Monday morning. These incidents sent alarm bells ringing in Europe.
A very clear sign that something is going on here. Nobody believes that these cables were accidentally cut. And I also don't care to believe in versions that it were anchors that accidentally caused the damage of these cables. So we have to conclude, without knowing exactly who did it, that it was a hybrid action. And we must also assume, without knowing it, of course, that it is sabotage.
What I can confirm is, of course, that the incident happened outside the island of Öland and another outside the island of Gotland, that there has been ship movement in that region, that there is an inquiry going on right now by the Swedish police authorities, and they're investigating this as an act of possible sabotage, but I can't speculate in specific vessels that could be involved at this stage.
Investigations began immediately. The affected nations started to hunt for the culprits. All 4 nations are NATO members, so their allies are helping out. And one of them finally got a lead. Denmark is hot on the trail. The Danish Navy is shadowing a ship. The suspect vessel seems to have passed over both the cables that were cut around the exact time that they were damaged. This is the ship in question. It's a bulk carrier called the Yipeng 3. The ship is Chinese. The Yipeng 3 set sail from the Russian port of Ust-Luga on November 15th. It is travelling to Port Said in Egypt. The Danish Navy has been tracking it for a while, and they even announced this on social media. It isn't an outright accusation, but China gave its response earlier today.
We are willing to maintain communication with the parties concerned in accordance with international law and jointly safeguard the safety of international seabed infrastructure. At the same time, we also hope that the normal navigational rights and legitimate interests of Chinese vessels will be effectively protected.
Beijing says that it's willing to cooperate with any investigation, but the spokesperson added that the ship's navigational rights should be protected. It's a tense situation. Europe probably won't accuse China directly. Even though Beijing has a history of cutting cables, it keeps doing so in the east, around Taiwan. This isn't the first China-linked incident in the Baltic either. Last year, a Chinese ship cut undersea gas and telecom lines, linking Finland and Estonia. This week's cable cut occurred at a tense time. Ukraine has started firing missiles deep into Russian territory. Moscow has called it an escalation. No one is sure how Russia will respond. That is why Europe is jumping at shadows and seeing sabotage and hybrid warfare in every incident.
Walk into any supermarket and you can find a banana for less than $6. But a banana duct taped to a wall, that's sold for more than $6 million. The banana artwork was first sold in 2019 for $120,000. It created social media uproar and stirred an age-old debate. What is art? And what is the value of art? This time the banana has gone on sale again and it fetched $6 million. So the answer is more confusing than ever before. Who decides the value of artwork? Why do people pay so much? Why is art an investment and how do people decide what to buy? Here's a report.
Wednesday morning, a banana was bought from a fruit stand in New York's Manhattan. It cost 35 cents. In the evening, the same banana was sold for a whopping $6.2 million. It became what's arguably the most expensive fruit in the world. Why this turn of fortune? Because the banana transformed into a star. It became the duct-taped banana artwork that has stirred controversy for years. In 2019, noted prankster Maurizio Catalan duct-taped a banana onto a wall. It was sold for $120,000. At the time, the provocative artwork created chaos. A man saw the banana and gave a fitting response in the name of performance art. He ripped it off the wall and ate it, so the artwork was taken down. But yesterday it went on sale again at Sotheby's, the premier art auction house.
So to us, this is a real galvanizing moment for the art market. It's something that really hasn't been seen before. There are very, very few artworks of this century that provoke the degree of media furore which this banana taped to a wall did.
At the auction, the banana was estimated to be worth $1 million, but the final hammer price was $5.2 million. Add the auction house fees, and the total came up to $6.2 million. That's sextuple the estimate. And who was bananas enough to make the bid? Chinese-born crypto entrepreneur Justin Sun. He went home with the banana and a range of instructions on how to install the artwork and how to replace the banana whenever it rots. Sun says that he plans to eat the banana this week as part of the unique artistic experience. Apparently, for the uber-wealthy, even eating a banana is an artistic experience. Sun could have bought the banana anywhere. But why did he spend more than $6 million? There are two reasons why. First, because the banana is a cultural phenomenon. It bridges art, memes and even crypto. Secondly, art investment. The banana is only an addition to other artworks in his collection. And he's not alone. More and more people are beginning to see the value in art, the literal monetary value. Because when done right, art can be a very smart investment. Also, it holds its value over time. During the 2020 pandemic, when most markets fluctuated, the art market remained stable. Today, it's estimated to be worth $67 billion, and it's only expected to grow further. So, how do people invest in it? It can be done offline at auctions or galleries. People can buy art online as well. Online art sales are expected to hit $9.32 billion this year. Like with any investment, time is of the essence. People invest when the prices are low. When it comes to contemporary art, the earlier the artist is in their career, the cheaper their art will be. This can be a hit or a miss. So those who really have money to spend go for the big, sure shot wins, the blue chip artists. Monet, Picasso, Cézanne, and so on. The value of their work is always assured. That being said, betting on the right art is always a tricky gamble. Because who decides the value of art? A decade ago, no one could have imagined a banana being sold for $6 million. This may leave you in banana splits, but it should also tell you everything about investing in art.
Reality is what you make it, at least according to those who manifest, those who believe in willing things into existence solely through their desire and the vibes of the universe. Apparently, they have willed so much this year that even Cambridge Dictionary is matching the vibe. They have declared manifest as the word of the year. Yes, the same dictionary that laureled perseverance in 2021. How millennial of them. But they have come a long way since. 3 years later, it's all about manifesting. For those who haven't gotten with this Gen Z program yet, manifesting is a belief that your thoughts can create your reality. Want to improve your health? Manifest. Want more money or Instagram followers? Manifest. Want your crush to text you? Say it with me. Manifest. The desires are endless, and Gen Z claims so are the possibilities. All you have to do is imagine achieving what you want. Visualizing it will make it happen, or more likely to happen. Gen Z swears by the secret sauce. But let us manifest a quick reality check here. This trend is a lot like crop tops. Gen Z thinks they invented it, but in reality, manifesting has been around for centuries. It dates back to the 19th century when a religious movement began in the US, the New Thought movement. It was based on a similar idea that positive thinking invites positive experiences. Then came another movement in the early 2000s, this time driven by pop culture thanks to a self-help book. Oprah Winfrey was a fan, so obviously the book sold 30 million copies, no questions asked. This did more for book club memberships than it did for actual dreams being achieved. Then 2 decades later, the pandemic happened. It gave us lockdowns, it left millions without hope, and left quarantine fads in its wake. Your bread baking, TikTok dancing, and of course, manifesting. That's when manifestation got its iconic makeover. It became a wellness trend. It shot to popularity weeks into the pandemic. Google searches grew 600% within the first few months. Cut to today, manifest has been looked up 130,000 times on the Cambridge website. The hashtag has about 40 billion views on TikTok and about 12 million posts on Instagram. Headlines are talking about Taylor Swift manifesting her relationship. And celebrities are swearing by the trend, the likes of pop star Dua Lipa and Olympic gymnast Simone Biles. As manifestation rides this popularity wave, obviously capitalism has hopped on the trend. The global wellness market is worth about $2 trillion. Manifesting is one of its fastest growing categories, with manifestation journals, crystals, even jewelry. This trend is a gift that just keeps on giving, but does it work? Can manifestation make your dreams come true? Or is it a Delulu mantra, as the young would say? Well, here's what research says. At its core, manifesting takes the idea of positive thinking and runs with it. It is about goal setting and affirmation. Research proves that these qualities are beneficial because it boils down to basic psychology. Your thoughts and emotions influence your experience. You can't achieve something that you don't even believe in. So far, science agrees with manifesting. Where it diverges is on the result or the guarantee of it. There is a difference between hoping for the best or dreaming of success and believing that you can move reality with your mind. This crosses the line of delusional to delusional, even harmful. So instead of just imagining achievement, do something about it. Consider the reality, make a plan, get to work. Manifestation alone is like a fantasy world of ideas. But as they say, ideas do not move mountains, bulldozers do. Ideas show where the bulldozer should go to work.
Didn't mean to startle you.
We had some trees come down and a lot of things blew around, but we did okay.
Yeah.
Nothing major.
But boy, did Mother Nature get a freak on last night. It was pretty gusty. I mean, it was to the point where it sounded like a freight train going through when it came, and you could just see those trees bending pretty well. Even the stalwart, sturdy trees were going pretty good on the side, you know, being blown over. So lots of branches falling everywhere, smaller branches, hopefully not too big of branches, but you didn't want to be out in it.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. A volcano in Iceland erupts for the 7th time in a year. A Chinese Navy fleet docks in Hong Kong for a 5-day visit.
Namaste, Jai Hind, and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. I'm Anand Narsimhan. Ladies and gentlemen, the exit pollsters have predicted a win, or a direction was largely that it will be a win for the Mahayuti, the NDA in Maharashtra, and all but Axis My India came out and said that it is going to be yet another win for the NDA in Jharkhand. So both the states, the projections were thus. Axis My India said, no, the JMM Congress combine is actually taking Jharkhand and comfortably with about 53 seats projected. But the poll of polls, mega poll of polls on Wednesday evening, that is the evening of the 20th, very clearly looked at these numbers and said, no, in Maharashtra, the NDA overall will aggregate around 150 plus seats, 154 seats. That was the mega poll of polls in Maharashtra. 145 is the halfway mark, and this is what the numbers were. PMark said 137 to 157, Matrice said 150 to 170, Chanakya Strategy said 152 to 160, People's Pulse said 175 to 195. Bhaskar also came out and said that these numbers could be 50-50. Bhaskar was one of the pollsters who said no, it's touch and go, actually gave the edge to the Mahavikas Aghadi or the India Alliance. Loksahi Marathi also said that it's touch and go with just the nose ahead, and it will be the independents who would come into play because they projected 8 to 23 seats to the independents or others. Bhaskar also said 20 to 25 seats to the others. So it was quite a khichdi, ladies and gentlemen. But what's happened is that there has been a historic voter turnout. Since the 1990s, in the last 3 decades, Maharashtra has not seen a voter turnout like it has this time around. Mumbai has also done something phenomenal. See, in 1995, 71.69 was the aggregate, and this time around, now look at those numbers. Since 1999, 2004, 2009, 2014, 2019, and look at the 2024 numbers. The 2024 numbers have inched beyond the 65% mark, and anything above 65% would mean that perhaps the winner will take it all. The winner will. Now, does that mean a pro-incumbency vote or an anti-incumbency vote? We'll have to wait and watch. But however, as we were queuing up The Right Stand, this edition, this Thursday edition, there has been a lot that's happened. There are two pollsters who've released the numbers. Access My India said this evening by 6:30 they'll start releasing the numbers for Maharashtra, and Chanakya has also come out and upwardly re-revised their numbers. So let's start with the Chanakya numbers. What's happened with Chanakya? Let's look at the Chanakya numbers. Chanakya has come out and said that 164 to 186, they have upwardly moved the projections. So median of 185 is what Chanakya is actually looking at, and they have reduced the numbers for IND Gathbandhan. More importantly, others are 8 to 18. So the number of independents who would come into play will be greater compared to the previous projections of Chanakya. In this case, the upward revision, does that symbolify or signal the fact that the voter turnout being an all-time record high could actually be a pro-incumbency vote and not